hey, in some ways that's what sales is. You know?
Yeah. Well, I think like sometimes you can prepare too much and like over prepare and then kind of get into issues there too. Like sometimes you have to find that balance between like acting and then like planning. But that would have been good. I should have just started talking.
Yeah.
But oh, yeah, I gotta figure this out again. Okay. Welcome back to the Real Talk Podcast, a podcast where just real people having a chat. Today we have Ethan Anderson on the podcast. He's an insurance agent, so we're gonna dive a little bit more into his personal life and his business. So
What up?
how you doing?
I'm good, man.
Yeah, it's good to see you.
Yeah,
it's
you
been
too.
24 hours.
Yeah, right?
Came out to the event last night. Appreciate you coming.
Yeah, dude, it was fun. I love networking events, and it was a really good venue.
Yeah,
Good
no, it's a
spot to
really
have
cool
it.
spot. Yeah. I mean, it's
Yeah.
cool that Forrest came out, or not came out. That's his, like, office space, so he just kind of, like, you know, lets me use it and whatnot. So we just kind of went out there, did a cool thing, and, yeah, it's just kind of fun to put something on. It kind of felt weird being like, I'm putting on an event. This is me.
Right.
Like, and then there's different stresses and pressures that come with that I just wasn't really expecting, you know, because you think, oh, like, I guess, you know, you threw your welcome party or whatever.
Well, and that's what I was going to compare it to. Yeah,
Mhm.
because when you think conceptually about an event, but then start to put pen to paper
Mhm.
on all the different stuff you're going to be doing, it's way more than you could have planned for.
Yeah.
Or like would think about initially.
And for me, like with the people, I was like, oh, I have X amount of people that are going to show up. But then like there's couples and this and that and the other. And then
Right.
like one person can't make it. Then they both can't make it. And then you're like, oh, wait, like people are dropping like flies.
Dude, and there's always a couple people that you throw invites out to that
Mhm.
don't say anything or respond, and then they always show up.
Yeah.
You know, some people that ghost you, you know, they're not going to come, but there's
Mhm.
always a couple that just kind of trail
Yeah.
in.
I stayed on people. I texted them probably 3-4 times in the last month just about like the events and whatnot. Just because it's something too where it's like, even if people don't come, it's still good just to show them that you're thinking about them and just like, hey, I want you to come hang out. Like,
Yeah.
it might not be your speed. You might not be available that night, but just thinking about you.
Yeah, and I also don't get down to the cities as much as I
Mhm.
used to. I feel like when I was in college, I went down there a lot more. So it's kind of fun to have like a corporate sort of fun event just
Mhm.
for a reason to go downtown. Because there's like that beautiful, beautiful drive as you're going up towards
Mhm.
Washington past the bridge, just right by De La Salle.
Yeah.
Yeah, right across that bridge. I love that spot of
Mhm.
the cities.
Yeah, no, it's a cool spot. I'm been in Minneapolis a lot more since I moved to like New Brighton, which is kind of like a change because I'm from
Mhm.
Oak Grove, so it's like everyone has 2 acres. It's just
Sure,
very, very
yeah.
different from Minneapolis, like 45 minutes away. And then I moved to La Crosse, which is kind of like in between like 50,000 people, and there's like a downtown and whatnot, but it's like just that.
Mhm.
And then now kind of moving to New Brighton, I'm like in that in between, spend more time in Minneapolis, and part of me like, I don't know, I've just been noticing lately like I don't want to say like a country kid because I'm not like at all, like personality wise, but just
Yeah.
like that's where I grew up. And so like sometimes I'm in Minneapolis and it's like, oh, there's too many potholes. These streets are tiny. There's people biking all over the place. Like, I personally don't get why you're biking in Minneapolis. You know what I mean? Like, cars are so heavy. They move so
Exercise,
fast.
I guess, but
Yeah, but you can run. You could go to the gym. You know, like
some
I
people
exercise
thrive in
on a
that
bike.
environment, though. Like, think about New York. A lot of people that have been there all of their adult lives, they'll say they'll never move. And part of that, I think, is because of the transportation. You can just get everywhere on the subway or walk or bike. And, I mean, some people kind of like that atmosphere.
Mm-hmm. I think some of that, too, is like people seem to kind of stay, you know? Like, at least a certain portion of people kind of stay, like, in their general area.
Yeah.
You know, like maybe you grow up in whatever, Oak Grove, and then you end up in like Minneapolis area, but it's like I guess I don't know where I'm going to end up, but like I stayed close to home-ish, and I feel like a lot of people
Mhm.
kind of end up doing that. And then if you're in New York, like you have everything there, it's like, why would you move, I guess? But
True. I think that's a mix of like a few things, right? It's personality is part of it. Like some people just like to explore.
Mhm.
They're always going to be travel people. Like I know this one friend of mine, and every time it feels like every 2 weeks she's traveling to a new spot, and she's a photographer, so she always snaps really cool pictures, and she just kind of like likes that lifestyle, I suppose. So I think personality is part of it. And then I think it also comes down to like your connections back home too. If you got like a strong home base and all your friends are located somewhere, chances are you'll probably stay. But if you're sort of scattered, I see more people move frequently.
So what did things kind of look like for you after you graduated college? Because like for me, I didn't go graduate go through and graduate. But like when I left college, at first it was like, oh, wow, I have so much time. And then it kind of felt weird being like distance from people. But then like once everyone my age started to graduate, it's like, oh, a third of the people went back home, a third of the people went elsewhere, and a third of the people stayed. So it's just like, where did everyone go?
Yeah. So right after college, right after graduation, I went to Northwestern in St. Paul. I stayed right in Roseville. I lived there for 2 years, right in the same town down the road from where my college was, because it was cheap housing. It was a little crappy duplex, and I mean the rent was cheap and our landlord was great, so we were good to stay there for a while. But after that, I just kind of wanted to upgrade and look for something a little nicer. So I moved a couple months ago to Oakdale, and I've been there now for a couple months. But it's funny that you say that because it's true. Like my 5 roommates that I had in college, me and myself and 4 others. One of them's in South Dakota now. One of them's in Los Angeles, and one of them's in Nebraska, and maybe moving somewhere else. So only me and one other guy from my original 5 are still in the city's area.
Yeah, it's just like, I mean, I guess obviously your 20s, like there's so much that's changing. It's just another one of those things.
Yeah, definitely.
Which, like, I guess, I don't know, didn't really think about. Like, everyone talks about your 20s being like this time where there's so much change going on and this, that, and the other. And I didn't really feel that until like the last year, I guess. Like 20 to 21, where was I? I was in lacrosse, just kind of starting real estate, trying to figure that out, like little 19-year-old, like, oh, what do I do? And I was like bartending and stuff at the time. So like just the whole being an adult thing and just, I don't know, is different. And then I just had less pressures and less freedoms at the time. But then kind of moving here, kind of moving out, having my own space, and then just, I don't know, I guess being single again too, and just having like all this time and like no structure. It's like, whoa.
Yeah, we were talking about that last night a little bit too. Yeah, when you're done with college, you've definitely got more independence over your time. So, I mean, that's got its own advantages and disadvantages. You know, for me, I don't like a very set schedule. So, I'll plan things and throw them out there, but try to keep my schedule sort of loose. That way I can say yes to last minute things, or I can plan last minute things. And thankfully, a lot of my friends are like that too. So we can still get stuff on the books, even if it's not planned 3 weeks in advance. But I know that's frustrating to some people.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't like that much flexibility.
Yeah, everyone runs it differently, and that's kind of something I'm trying to figure out is like, because for a while it's like, I have a set schedule, I'm going to do everything to a T, but then it's like, well, I might think something's going to take me 30 minutes, it takes me 40 minutes, or, then I try to do, okay, instead of scheduling like a full day, maybe I'll do a little bit less, and then things will pop up, or like this, that, and the other. And one thing I'm trying to do now is like, we did like a Monday.com board for our team. So that's just kind of like you write down all of your tasks and then you break it up day by day. So it's like Monday, I'm going to do these 7 things. Then you just have a checklist and then it's all there. So I just have it in my phone right now, and that kind of stresses me out because sometimes I see a list of like 30 things. I'm like, oh, wow, how am I going to do all these this week? But I think just having it broken up and then having it be like, okay, even if I don't get to everything on Monday, it's still there and I can like scroll up and see it. And I just think that's slightly different than having it all on my phone. Like, I'd rather have it be on my laptop and just kind of like be able to put that away slightly, as opposed to it be on my phone and just constantly there. Yeah.
I think that's a good way to have it, kind of like laid out what your tasks are that you have to do, and not like a specific time frame. That's where I kind of struggle in the schedule that I don't like as much. If I'm like 10 to 12, I'm doing this, and then 12 to 12:15, I'm doing this. Having it kind of laid out with a more flexibility, but then specified tasks to do, I think I work pretty well doing that way too. Yeah.
And so how long did it kind of take you to figure that out?
It's been a process. I mean, I guess I knew early on in my working career that I didn't love like having a set schedule for like all the tasks I was doing. My first job ever, I worked at a pizza joint in my hometown, and it was like 5 or 6 things that you had to constantly be checking. So a lot of times I would work on the salad bar and like refilling things, but then I'd also have to be prepping items, if they were running low on stuff, and then doing dishes, grabbing plates, taking orders, taking phone calls. So I thrived in that environment because I knew like you kind of almost just feel where you have to be next. And then, I felt like that was a really good structure for me.
Well, do you kind of feel like that was a high stress environment too? Just like a lot going on?
Kind of, but I mean, I sort of like that. I like the pressure, I like the juice.
Yeah, well, like I worked at a pizza place for like 6 to 7 months. I just kind of got that feeling there too. Like it was not well run. Like I was there as a driver for like 3 weeks, and they're like, "Yeah, you seem competent. Do you wanna be a manager?" And I was like, "Sure."
May as well.
Bad decision. Should have just got the tips, been a driver, and just done my thing. But I was like, whatever. Experience.
Yeah, management is huge on that too. Like my manager at the time was excellent. I mean, he's one of those managers and a great role model for me, especially when I was that age. I was 15 when I got my first job, where he was in the mud with us. And like, the type of management that I really don't like is when people are sort of standoffish. They tell you tasks to do and then they're not going to get in there and do them themselves. But he was the hardest one working along with us. And so I always respected what he said, and really, really fun guy too. Fun atmosphere to work in for my first job.
Well, especially if it's like a pizza place, you kind of want it to be fun. Like I feel like the management takes it so seriously, but it's not like that serious. So it's like you have to have fun, but it's also like stressful. Like for me, when I was like closing, you have specific numbers you have to hit. So you have like labor numbers, you have out the door time, you have like, I don't know, a couple different things. It's been a while. But it's something where like an order comes in, you have X amount of minutes to get that done and in the oven. Then you have X amount of time to get that out the door. Then you have X amount of time to get that delivered. And then you also have a labor percentage. So if you make $1,000, you can only spend $250 a day on labor. So it's like you have to just be watching everything. So like if I'm in the store and sales are being slow, and then it's like, cool, I have to like cut someone and get them out of the store so I can slow down the cost of labor. But then if we pick up again, it's on me to make everything.
It's a great point. Yeah. It's funny how you like learn those little skills in your first jobs too. Because I remember one big thing was I loved talking on the phone even back then when I was that age. And when a call would come in, I would try to hit a couple of upsales. And it's not even necessarily like I was getting any benefit for hitting the upsales. That was just kind of what I was trained to do. And I thought it was fun. So just like offering little things like, do you want to get an extra cheese sticks or dessert pizza or whatever? I feel like that was a core skill that I had to use later on, now working full-time in sales, which is where I think I'll be for my whole career. Yeah.
Do you envision yourself being like on the insurance side of things, or do you think you're going to transition into anything different?
It's kind of tough to say. I feel like insurance will be my long-term job that I stay within. It's great because it's a product that everybody needs and everyone also hates talking about it. So if you can try and bring a little levity to it and explain things that other agents are not explaining out there, there's a huge benefit for you in that. And also because of that same thing, I see very low amounts of coverage pretty frequently. So at the end of the day, if I can get a customer onto a better policy that's going to better protect them, that makes me feel good. And so there's a fulfillment that comes in that too. And I think that's important to have some sort of that at the job that you're working in. If you don't feel like you're getting any fulfillment, that's where a huge percentage of the working population hates their jobs.
Yeah, it's like 80+% of people hate their job,
it's
something like that.
Which is crazy. But
and if 80% hate it, probably 15% don't like it, or something
like
that.
Yeah, it's a rare thing nowadays to find something that you're good at and that you enjoy. I was talking about this a couple weeks back. There's I think it's a Japanese concept.
Ikigai.
Yeah, Ikigai, dude. And I love it. It's so it's the combo of those 5 factors, right? It's a mix of what you're good at, what you enjoy, what the world needs, or where the opportunity lies, what can make you money. Or I think maybe is it those 4 factors?
It's 4.
I think it's those 4, right? I
forget the order. But yeah, it's essentially that. Maybe, I don't know. It's essentially that.
Right.
I remember hearing that when I was working at the pizza place like 3-4 years
ago.
Oh,
really? Yeah.
Yeah, I was like driving around. I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. That's cool. And I started thinking about that. And then I was like, at the time, I like didn't really know what I wanted to do. But I was like, I'll do like real estate or insurance. And then I just met with the realtor. I'm like, I'll do this.
Yeah. Well, and what's interesting is if you think about that concept, right? Between those 4 things, true fulfillment, and I agree with this, is if you can find the mix of those 4 in between. But a lot of people will only aim for what can make them money and what they're good at. Or just kind of naturally people are drawn to what they're good at. And then if you can make a solid wage, that's what keeps you at that job. So they don't really take into account where the opportunity is or what the world really needs out there or what they really enjoy at the end of the day. So it's a really interesting concept. It's helped me as I've kind of looked through opportunities in the job market. But to answer your first question, I think I probably will stay for insurance, in insurance for quite a while.
So do you think, because there's so many different, well, to my knowledge, there's probably a couple of different models that you can have within insurance. Like, are you always going to be selling yourself, or do you like envision yourself kind of opening up like, I don't know, a team or a sales force or whatever, and then having agents below you, like you kind of train them in, and then it's like you're just kind of head honcho? Or
yeah, well, I might try out a few different things. What I've done over the last year is that kind of structure, working as the owner. And what I've really found is that the sales is what I really love to do and what I'm the best at. And I think part of it just has to do with age and experience too, like managing staff and, being the person that looks over expenses. Those are all new things to me. And I wouldn't necessarily say I'm naturally talented at them. I think I probably have some leadership that I'm growing into and working on still. But the sales is what I've really found success in and what I think I could do long term. So I think a producer role for me at another agency could be a great fit. Being an agency owner could be a good fit. It just kind of depends what the opportunity is in the market.
So long term, probably just kind of stick to what you're good at. Just kind of keep selling. It's like,
right.
I guess you could probably start a team, but then that comes with a learning curve of a bunch of stuff that maybe you don't really want to take on.
Yeah,
at least at this time maybe.
And the other thing too is that insurance is like so broad as an industry that you can focus in specific categories where you can win. And then that's where you really are able to scale up your business, is when you focus on inside insurance, the areas that you're really good at. So property casualty is where I found the most success since I've started a couple of years ago, which is auto, home, umbrella, specialty products like motorcycles and boats. But there's also great opportunity in commercial insurance. I also love doing life insurance, which is a really fun thing to do. And also very important for people to set them up and put them on a good trajectory for their families and for the rest of their lives. So if you can really find an area to specialize, I think that's where the most talented agents are.
Okay.
You can be competent in everything, but specialize and focus on your marketing dollars and everything on the area where you can really win at the end of the day.
Okay. So kind of a broad question, but I guess a lot of people on my social media are going to be like my age, like 22-ish. And I guess what advice would you give someone who like just graduated college, they're getting their first job, but like, not making a whole lot or whatever, like just want to save as much as they can. They want to spend as little as possible, but get solid insurance coverage. How would you kind of go about, I guess, guiding that person to getting like the best coverage possible?
Right. So I would say an important area is to look at what's actually included on your policy, right? Because a lot of times, especially nowadays, we're in a digital age where you can hop on your computer today and find insurance and buy it just like that, just as soon as possible. No agent there to support you or advise you of the best insurance coverage to choose. And because of that, I see a lot of people taking the very minimum. The state minimum in Minnesota is 30-60-10 coverage limits. And in my opinion, those limits are far too low, and most people wouldn't even know what they're referring to with the insurance that they pay for. Most people will know comprehensive or collision coverages because that's the ones they're familiar with in accidents, having their vehicle repairs done for their vehicle or their own medical expenses, from personal injury protection. But the actual meat and potatoes of your policy is the coverage limits for if you hit someone else and cause a significant injury. And those limits at the state minimum level, the lowest allowed in Minnesota, are $30,000 per person and $60,000 per accident. Then for property damage, for damaging another vehicle, the state minimum level is only $10,000, which is very, very low. So literally, if you hit a $20,000 vehicle on the road nowadays and you total it out, which happens pretty frequently now because of how expensive parts are, you'd be looking at a $10,000 liability out of your own pocket. And that's assuming your insurance company accepts 100% responsibility for the claim, of which claim gets split up, or fault, I should say, gets split up pretty frequently in Minnesota.
Okay, so numbers wise, what would be the difference between like $10,000 and $20,000 of coverage? Just like in that scenario, right. It's like you're gonna write a check for $10,000, but if you're paying $200 a month extra, like the break even is so far out.
Well, and that's the thing too that most people don't realize, and that's what's so sad about it, and what I try to educate folks on is that if you bump up your liability limits from 30-60-10 up to my minimums I write for my clients, I don't write anything lower than $100,000 per person for bodily injury and $300,000 per accident in total for bodily injury, and then $100,000 for your property damage. If you were paying $200 a month for your state minimums, I would be surprised if it was more than $210 a month for having those higher limits of coverage. So literally for $10 a month more, you'd be looking at getting 5 times total more bodily injury coverage and 10 times more on the property damage side.
So like if you're my age, significant. You get that sort of insurance and you get into one accident ever, like you more than pay for it essentially.
Absolutely. Yeah, without question. And also, here's another thing that most people don't know is that in the eyes of the insurance company, you get a rating, you get a score in the same way that you get a credit score. It's called your insurance score. It's not readily available to the public, but the insurance companies, if you're looking to switch, they have that number, right? If you have your coverage limits at a good area of coverage over time, that tends to increase up your insurance score and make your rating for future prices, if you're shopping around 5 years down the line, in a better position for you. So that decision alone, I would say, offsets the increasing cost that you were looking at. I have a colleague where he had a similar situation. He was on state minimums to start. Then he got moved on to a little higher limits of coverage. And eventually, within 2 years, he was paying far less than he was paying for state minimums with those better amounts of coverage in place. And I see that super frequently. Obviously, an ideal situation is if I can save someone some money and then also get them on better amounts of coverage. But I'm a value prop when I'm selling my insurance policies because those limits are worth paying a little bit more for. And there's also other benefits too, depending on which insurance company you choose over another one. But those limits are something that not a lot of people know and are super important to take a look at.
No, that's huge. Because, I think value is probably the biggest thing in the marketplace. Like, even when you look at, like, realtors, like, generally most realtors are going to list a house for, like, a certain amount of, like, a certain percentage-ish. Like, there's obviously a range of negotiation in there, but it's going to be, like, 5 to 6% or so. And then, so listing agent, you're going to call it 3%. But if you're someone that, like our team, like, we sell houses routinely for 5% more money. So, like, on a $300,000 house, it's like if, we're making you 15 grand more on top of that. And so if you're like the seller and you're like, well, you're going to be taking so much money, it's like, well, but we're going to get you 5% more. Like, I think that's something that a lot of people look at, and you probably get that too, where it's like, oh, it's so expensive, I don't want to spend $1 more. But then I think having that education, kind of showing people that, like, this will actually be more beneficial for you down the long run. And it's like a win-win for both of us. Obviously, like, on paper, it's like, oh, well, I'm paying you so much money. And it's like, yeah, I don't want you to feel like you're paying for something that's not worth it. Like, I want you to feel like I'm going to sell your house. I'm going to do the best job possible. It's going to be a super easy process. You're going to enjoy it, and you're going to make more money. And so I feel like that's probably kind of what you're trying to do there with everything. And
100%. Your biggest sales tool is selling yourself. And especially, like, at our age too, where we're energetic, we're out there in the field more than some other older real estate agents or older insurance agents maybe that haven't quite adapted to what the young people are doing and are doing out there in the market. Selling yourself is a huge, huge advantage. And especially since I work with a more expensive product, generally, I would say, than what the market has, or at least I would say close to what the market has to offer. I'm not going to be substantially cheaper in most cases. So you have to find other ways to win and provide some true value to your clients that you're bringing on board.
So what would you say to someone who, like, I guess maybe you've kind of touched on some of this stuff, but then they're like, yeah, I don't want to pay an extra $100 a month for extra coverage. Like, I just want the minimums.
Right. Well, I would say that I'm not the right fit for you. I believe so strongly that insurance coverage you should have at an optimum level. And I refuse to take business that's at those state minimum levels. And that's a hard line that I've drawn for myself writing insurance. There's other agents out there that will take the state minimum coverages. And I would say that you're a better fit with them. Now, what I would say is this, right? And I've had this scenario pop up before. If someone is not willing to switch over with me because I'm too expensive, I'm outside their price range at those higher levels of coverage, I'll have them increase up their higher levels of coverage with their existing company or ask them to do so. And then I'll requote them at their next renewal. And at that point, then, in most cases, I can still get the policy about the same or less than what they're paying now. And it's going to still be for, more benefit to the client as well. I had a client that I signed up a month ago that was a similar situation to that, where he bumped up his limits. I was able to requote him then in my better policy system, and I was able to get it less than what he was paying now with his previous company. So there's always that working for you there. I would also say, too, that because I've drawn that hard line in the sand, I'm not willing to write those state minimums. It's true that I've turned away business and I've lost business because of that. But my client base, whenever they've had a claim that's come up, they've never maxed out their coverage limits under my care. And I have had a higher retention rate with my existing book of business than state averages for other insurance agents or even internally at my company. So I think there's benefits for working with integrity. And just because of that one line that I've drawn, I think I've gained more money than the clients that I would have maybe taken on at those lower levels of coverage.
Yeah, well, I think that's huge. Like, a lot of people talk about that, like, kind of as your business grows. Like, once you get to be, like, a huge, huge business person, obviously you can't say yes to everything, but then it's, like, kind of having that growth and that trajectory. It's, like, at what point do you kind of start to draw that line and whatnot? Because it's, like, obviously you want every piece of business. You want to close every deal and make all the money and whatnot and help as many people as possible. But you know, like you said, at the end of the day, you have to draw that line. But my thoughts,
and it hurts.
Like,
it hurts sending away that business, man.
Yeah. But my thoughts, just like kind of hearing you talk about that, is like, I mean, if someone gets injured, like they're taken care of with you. And if you give someone the minimum coverage and then they hit a car that's $20,000, they're not covered. They're probably going to be a little bit pissed with you, like no matter what.
Right. That's
right?
not a sticky client. You know, if someone's looking for the state minimum coverages, chances are they're price shopping every single renewal. So it's not like they're a really solid or ideal customer anyways that I would be looking to have on the books long term. But if I can have them, you know, in that scenario, like I was talking about with the client I signed a month ago, move on to a better amount of coverage temporarily and then requote them and end up bringing some value to them, that's a more long-term customer because they could see that I'm telling the truth and that I really do care about their coverage limits and how much protection they're going to have in place.
So what's kind of been one of the more like rewarding experiences that you've had working in insurance so far?
Dude, great question. There's been a bunch. I mean, obviously claims that I was there to answer the phone and talk to the customer and then have their claim be fully covered is a good example of one. Wins like that where they were paying quite a bit previously and I was able to move them over for better coverage at a cheaper price are also ones. You know, having a client refer over a family member is a big one. I've had a few of those. And that's always great when you have good rapport with the client as well. And then you see their family member and, you know, the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. Yeah. They're also really nice people. Those are a couple examples, I would say, off the top of my head. Yeah.
Okay. So I think like an interesting thing is like kind of as you move forward in business and life, like you can always, like hindsight's always 20/20. You can look back and be like, oh, I should have done this. I should have done that. And I think a lot of times like people are like, what advice would you have given your past self? But I think an interesting thing is like if we extrapolate forward, like think of Ethan 5-10 years down the road, like what advice would he give to today's Ethan?
It's a good idea. Yeah, I love that idea, dude.
It's kind of a puzzler. I think mine, like I think I said
you go first.
I think I tell myself to kind of like slow down. You know, something I think I've heard recently is just like we overestimate what we can do in 1 year and underestimate what we could do in 5. And I think like I just have a tendency sometimes to like work, and then just get like burnt out and tired. And that's just not super sustainable. So trying to just find ways to, like with our business planning, is just kind of breaking it down. Like how many conversations do I need to get to where I need to be? And then we just break that down and then just kind of follow that. And as opposed to like, I'm just going to work as hard as possible and do what I can. It's kind of breaking it down and like, all right, this is the minimum. And making sure I at least do that. And then if I have the energy, then doing more. But like not setting the bar like so high that like, if I'm not optimal 100% of the time, I'm going to fail.
Yeah, I would say mine is actually pretty similar. After giving it a second to think about it, my work-life balance is not great right now. I'm the type of guy that, I was kind of middle of the pack intelligence-wise and just I've tried to get to where I'm at now just through grit and working harder, working a little bit later into the day. But also my personality tends to be one of extremes, right? So if I work really hard, then the opposite end of that might be doing nothing for a day or two and just like you said, feeling super burnt out. So getting a good balance, I think, is good. I still think the 9 to 5 workflow is not the most ideal thing for me. I need a little pressure and I like working a little later into the evening, but having more solid things on my schedule that are in place might be a piece of advice for my future self. I hope that in 5 years I've got that a little better under wraps.
Yeah, I think so one thing I'm pretty interested in is lifting and exercise and all that. And I think I've noticed more like there's just a bigger emphasis on recovery. And that's kind of something where when I was younger, I was like, I don't need to recover, I'm young. And then as I get a little bit older, I'm like, oh, my body hurts. Like it just aches, like my knees, my back, my feet, just too much soccer, too much running, too much lifting. And so something I'm trying to focus more on now is like stretching, recovery, kind of like loosening up my tight body. And as I do that, it's like, oh, like that's weird. I like didn't lift today, but I stretched and massaged and I'm like stronger the next time I go lift. And so what I realized is like you have to take time to like let yourself heal and recover and kind of like evaluate things so that you can come back stronger. And so like, maybe not take like a month-long vacation, but like, work hard for 2 months and like, all right, cool, I'm going to chill for like 4 or 5 days, just kind of unplug and then go back at it. Or like whatever it is for you, work hard for, 2 weeks, take 3-4 days off or whatever makes the most sense, because I think having that and just like going forward, taking a step back, and then going farther forward is probably more beneficial than like, I'm just going to work as hard as I can forever, because you're going to slow down at some point.
Yeah, and then your work doesn't become as quality at that point too. Like, you might not notice it, but your level of work when you're staying well rested and like doing stuff that recharges you. So like some people, they're better off if they can spend some time alone every day and have some intentional time just by themselves. Other people, and this is more my personality, I kind of have to like talk through things to process them. And like I get more energized when I've got a couple of social things on my calendar. So having those, like, it's kind of what I was saying with like having a schedule, having some more like set pieces in place. Like I had a Tuesday night meeting that I was going to for a while with some friends, and that's been really good. And now actually on Tuesday nights, me and my roommate, we do a home cooked meal and we invite over friends, you know, whenever the opportunity comes up every Tuesday night. And that's good to have just a consistent thing on my week where, okay, on Tuesdays, I'm not working past 5:30. I'm going home and we're going to cook and just enjoy our time together. Also interesting you say that too when you think about like the flow of jobs and the seasonality of work, because I was going to ask you like just an example of kind of what real estate looks like for you through the yearly scale, right? Because my understanding is a lot of real estate agents kind of take the winter a little easier. And then in the springtime is where a lot of homeowners are more interested in purchasing, or I guess new buyers are interested in purchasing. So talk me through kind of what that set looks like.
So from right now, what are we, like November 9th or 10th?
Yeah, sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah, 9th. Okay, so like from here, the next like week and a half, like people are going to be out kind of as they have been. But then like holidays hit, then people kind of disappear. Like the only people who are going to be looking at houses on Black Friday, like absolutely need a house and really want one, not like the people that are like, maybe we'll move. You know, like you get people like that are out and about. You get a lot more of those people out in the summer. I'm getting off track though. So I guess November, you know, we're going to see it kind of be steady up until like the holidays. Then we kind of take a dip between the holidays. I would still expect there to be some decent activity between like right in between the two, but really this time of year, it's just kind of more so people who are serious that are out looking. But everyone's still on the sidelines. You know, it's just less people want to go out and actively look. But, you know, if you want to buy a house in June and now it's October or November, that need doesn't necessarily go away. It's just, oh, it's cold, or like I don't want to look. So you just maybe need a little nudge, because like in summer it's all these offers, it's so competitive, it's hard to get a deal.
Leases also tend to be up between May and August too. Is something I've noticed.
Yeah, and then just like with school too, like a lot of parents are like, all right, we're gonna sell in June, move in July, and then you don't like disrupt the kids and all that. So a lot of people want to move in spring, summertime. We actually call it like after the Super Bowl. That's like generally when there's a huge uptick in activity. It's like, all right, Super Bowl's over. Let's like start looking at homes and start figuring this out now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's this weird seasonality, and then, you know, typically realtors, like the saying is kind of like you spend the first like chunk of the year like kind of worried about taxes and all that, and then you pay your taxes and you're like, oh, I'm broke. I'm so broke. And then you spend the next like 6 months like working really hard. You work through summer, you catch up, you get some money in your bank account, you're good, and then you take vacations, and then you get back and you're like, I have no business. And then you start like grinding again, you start making a little money, then taxes hit, then you pay your taxes, and you're like, I am so broke. And you just go over that over and over and over again. And so getting like passive income and stuff like that is going to be huge for me, like as I get going, just to try to avoid some of that. And then also just being more intentional and like living below my means and all that will obviously help with that. Yeah,
definitely. So that's interesting to hear like what the sort of year looks like from a real estate perspective. That's good to understand for insurance purposes too. It's kind of been claimed before by some people that insurance also slows down over the winter. I don't really buy it though. I kind of think people are always shopping and interested in looking around, especially in the market that we're seeing nowadays. Everybody is open to getting a quote, which I'm willing to do, by the way, if anyone wants one. And I think that over the wintertime, just like in the summertime, people are always shopping around and looking to improve, and especially situations like where they're getting those state minimum coverages or lower amounts of value on their home insurance. There's always an opportunity to provide value, because those same customers are going to have the same, coverages over the summer that they would over the winter. It's just a matter of getting in front of them.
That's interesting that you see that with insurance, because I would think that it's just relatively steady year round. But I wonder, like,
and that's what I think too. But some people claim that maybe it's because agencies take it a little more easier over the winter.
Well, do you think like the sun would have an effect. Because if you, like, summertime, everyone's like uppity, everyone's got more energy, like the sun's out, right? Like I feel like we're relatively solar powered. Like I feel like I have less energy in winter than I do in summer, and I feel like that's probably most people.
True.
And
yeah.
so I just wonder, like, yeah, maybe you have more energy, maybe you're up longer, maybe you're just more yourself in summer. Then winter hits, you're like, oh, more lethargic. It's like, do I really want to, like,
But then the
shopping
flip
for insurance isn't necessarily a fun thing, that's not
Yeah.
like the top of everyone's list. So that's probably one of the first things to go out the door when you're kind of like, don't feel like it.
But the flip side of that is that in Minnesota over the winter, you also tend to have more claims. Or actually, I take that back. Spring is usually our biggest claim time because that's the biggest time of the year for hail and hail damage. But, you have snow and you have all those banks and ice and everything. So claims definitely, I feel like, have an uptick over the winter, which would make me think that agencies are more busy. But I think it's relatively the same across the board.
Yeah, that's interesting. I like with real estate, one of the sayings is like there's closings every day, because there are. Like there will never be a day of the year, as far as I'm aware, up here that a house won't sell. Like there's 250 like business days in a year, and there's about 1,000 new listings a week. So that's what, 50,000 new listings a year, and say 47,000 of those sell across 250 days. Like you just have so many transactions taking place. That's like there's always something.
Cool.
Yeah, I've got no topic to start off of. I guess, what do you like to do outside of work?
Sure. Yeah. So I love music, and one of our actual things that we have in common is I love to collect vinyls. So
You have
I've got
more than me.
Yeah, right. Well, you're a little earlier in the journey, but I promise you'll be where I'm at in a couple of years.
How many do you have now? Like 300 something? Right?
Oh, not quite that many. I think between 150 and 200 probably.
That's still a lot. I'm at probably like 20-ish or so.
It's funny too how it ended up happening. A friend of mine, really good friend of mine, so me and my 3 closest friends, we have like a little group, I guess you could say. And every year we do like a Secret Santa. So I had this one friend of mine to get a gift for, and I bought him a record player and Damn by Kendrick on vinyl, and I thought it was so cool that I couldn't help it, but I bought myself one too. That was the record, Damn by Kendrick. And that kind of started it. I bought the record even before I had a record player. I just thought it was so cool. So then that started a journey, and now I usually get like 1 per paycheck. So like 2 vinyls a month, I'd say, is kind of where I'm at now, or more if I have like a new record that's coming out. There's obviously artists that I love that are still releasing music, so I'll get their records. I also love playing basketball when I can. So that's been a lot of fun, and that's a little bigger in the summertime because I like playing on courts more than outside, like outdoors, over being inside. But try to play when I can for that as well.
Yeah, it's good to be active. I joined a soccer league this summer, which kind of was like bad timing because the first time I went to that venue where my event was, I was in the soccer simulator, but I had like work shoes on, so I took those off to go kick, and I just planted it and immediately just like ate shit and just sprained my toe right away. I was like, oh, this is terrible. And then I had like a soccer game like the following week. I was like, I cannot walk. So I didn't play that one or like the following one. And then my toe was like better-ish. So I would just tape it and then just go like take 2 Advil and then go play and then like not be able to walk for 3 days after. And then just keep doing that over and over again. And it got better over time, but now it like, I can't quite bend it all the way. I don't know if it's just, if it's healed improperly or if it's just never going to heal, but it...
yeah, I don't know. Some of those sports injuries kind of linger, you know? I think also part of that is just age too, which feels so weird to say. I'm in my 20s, but it's like every couple of months, one of my knees just starts to hurt. And I don't know why that is, but it just kind of happens.
I get that too. Well, I tore my MCL in my right knee, so some days it just aches.
Does it? Okay.
Yeah, like sometimes I feel like I can feel the pressure change, like in spring. I'm like, ooh, it's going to rain.
Yep.
But I don't know if that's a real thing or not.
I would also say too, another thing I love to do outside of the work is I'm a big movie guy. So there's an app I love called Letterboxd where you can track all the movies that you've seen. So when you watch a new one, you can rate it and then you can write reviews for it. So I usually go to about 1 movie a week in theaters because I love going in person. I love the Imagined in White Bear is kind of my favorite theater because it's so clean and it's it's priced pretty good too. So I go to a lot of movies there, and then I always write up my reviews on Letterboxd. That's another really fun thing I do in my free time.
Oh, that's cool. Do you know how many reviews you have?
I could check it right now. I think I've seen about 1,500 movies.
Wow. Do you think that's a lot or like a little? Because I have no idea. Like,
I'll tell you that once you start like rating the ones that you've seen, it adds up fast. You've seen a lot of movies when you were a kid that you don't realize and you don't think about, but then you see them on the app. I've seen 1547, and this year I've logged 191 movies. So,
yeah, I'm trying to think, like, if you were to watch 2 movies a month for like 20 years, how much does that come out to?
We got a calculator on the phone too.
240, 480 movies.
What was it? 24 movies times 20 years?
Yeah, 480, right?
Yeah, that sounds right. Why am I busted? Yeah, 480.
Look at me go.
I should have just known that off. I should have just known that off the top. Yeah.
Yeah, slightly round numbers. But
are you a big movie guy or not as much?
Sometimes I can't pay attention for a movie.
Okay.
It really depends, I guess. Like, I don't know. It kind of depends on the movie. Like, sometimes I just like a show, just kind of something that's passive. Like, I guess I don't really go out of my way to sit down and watch a movie, but if something seems really interesting, I'll be like, ooh, I'll check it out. And then, like, I'm not like a huge movie buff, but I try to like appreciate like the writing and all the like kind of forethought and stuff into that. Like, I've tried to kind of like just spend more time kind of focusing on like creative outlets and stuff like that, and just trying to have like, just for myself personally, having something outside of work to do that's fun, but then also just, it's kind of fun just to look at stuff. Like, I listen to comedy podcasts. I just like watch people talk, and like, it's really interesting just to see someone take like an everyday thing. Like, I was walking, and then these people were like walking next to me, and then all of a sudden it's like I'm in their group, and like that's just a normal thing that happens to you every day. But it's like, can you twist that, make a joke out of it? You know, you have some setup. It's like you tell some weird joke. It's like, I was at Target, and then I was feeling weird because there was this baby. This baby was giving me this weird look, and I didn't want to like mess around with the baby, and I wanted to say something to the baby, but it was the baby, so I wasn't. You know, and you just have this weird, and then you just punchline at the end, and it could be like I remember I was thinking that this when I was going to Target, like, you know, you're doing the walk, and then people get next to you, you're like, huh. And then you like look around, you kind of feel like you're part of their family, and you're like, I don't want to be a part of your family. Like, this is not what I'm here for.
You get that at the mall too. If you're at the MOA, like people are walking close to you.
You get assimilated.
Yeah, or like if you're kind of cut off when you're walking at the mall, and so you can't walk past someone, so you have to match their speed. Oh, that's so annoying to me.
Yeah, you become like the extended family right there.
Yeah, it's funny, man. I love movies because they open my mind up to new ideas, I think is the big thing. You know, to some extent, there's some movies you can just throw on and they're just pure entertainment. You don't have to think very much. But for the most part, I love like dramas and romance and mystery. I love comedy movies too, because there's, like you said, there's good setups that you can notice as you're watching a movie. Like Airplane, for example. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie, but it's like I don't know, there's like a calculation on it, but every minute there's like 3 jokes that happen. Wow. So like every time that I've watched the movie, I think I've watched it 3 times now, I've caught new jokes every time that I've watched it, because there's just the quantity of them is so many. And there's lots of movies out there that are kind of like that too.
Like Borat.
Borat, yeah, that's another example of one.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. That I'm slightly ashamed to say it, but that's like my favorite movie. I've seen it way too many times.
That's fine.
We're coming up on like 15, 20 times.
There's a lot worse movies you could watch 100 times, like the Eras Tour, for example.
Yeah, well, like with Borat, it's like there's so many jokes that like if you take it at face value, you're like, oh wow, like you probably shouldn't say that. But the whole premise of the movie is like, let me highlight some of the issues that like plague the country and like put it out there. And so it's like, if you know that, then it's like, oh, that's way different.
And using comedy for that is way better too. Like one of the TV show that I love is Arrested Development. You ever seen that TV show?
I think a little bit, like some of the first season.
It's kind of like that too. Like it's showing rich people and kind of what their lives look like. And it's a comedy about them, but it makes some really interesting points as well as you're watching it. It's one of the smarter comedy shows out there, I would say.
Yeah, I think comedy gets kind of a bad rap because like the whole point of comedy is not the whole point, but like you want to say things that get a reaction. You want to say things that like you shouldn't say, and that's the whole premise of it. And then people get mad, like, "Oh, I can't believe you told that joke. Like that's so insensitive to this group of people." I'm like, "Yeah, if they meant it, you know." But I think there's a difference when you're like, "I'm a comedian. This is my act. This is what I do. Like I'm putting on a show." And like, what's funny about that is because I don't actually believe those things.
Yeah,
you know, it's like sarcasm. It's
Yeah, I would also say too that's a more recent thing. Like if you look at comedy in the 70s and 80s with like the big players back then, they didn't hold anything back. It's only, and even like when I was first growing up and when I was in like elementary school and middle school, you were pretty much still allowed to say whatever you wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
It's only within the last 5 years that, because of the big cancel culture that we've seen become more prevalent, comedians can't really say everything anymore. There's certain topics that are just off the table.
Which is weird because, like, I see it on both hands. Like, obviously you shouldn't be saying certain things, and like certain things can offend certain people, and like you don't want to be offending certain people, but at the same time you can't necessarily take away someone's like liberty and freedom to be expressing themselves. And I think like,
it's a tough call for how to kind of approach it. I mean, I'm sort of in the camp of people can say what they want, and then the reaction is the reaction. And then there's also that whole big thing too nowadays where it seems like it's tougher for people to separate the art from the artist.
Mm-hmm.
You see that with actors and musicians, comedians, certainly. What's kind of your opinion on that? Do you struggle with supporting an actor or like an artist if they've said something before in the past that you don't agree with?
Not really, no, because it's like you don't really know what's going on with those people, right? Like all we see is what the media says, and it's like they could be a completely different person from how they portray or how they are portrayed, and it's like you never really know. Like, and people can be like, this person did this, like this person got into a DUI, and it's like, oh, that's bad, but like in your head you're kind of placing like, oh, this must have happened and this must have happened, they did this because of that, and then all of a sudden it's a bad thing because you put that on them. And so like for me it's like, I don't know, I mean, everyone does bad things. I guess I'm just kind of here to enjoy the art, and like there's certain artists that I like really dive into, like Mac Miller. Love him. You know,
I was gonna tell you, I was listening to Divine Feminine on the way over, man. Hadn't heard that
one.
record in a while. It's good though.
I try to spread it out, like with his records. Like I'll just be in heavy rotation for one, and then all of a sudden I just kind of like give it a break for a bit because it's like, oh, I've listened to Mac Miller nonstop for like a month. And then I give it a little break, and I just go back to another one.
His openers are always so good. Come Back to Earth is like one of his top songs. And then today, like I said, I was listening to Congratulations. So good.
Yeah. It's a long song, though. Like 6-7 minutes with like the whole grandma interlude in the back there.
Yeah. Yep. But I was thinking about this on the drive over. It's so funny how like music in certain patterns evokes emotion. Like you don't really think about it very much, but like the little riff that he has with the piano on that song, it's like it makes me feel emotional about like emotional moments from my life. But I don't know why that is. It's just there's nothing like tied to that makes me feel emotional. But it's just like the certain pattern that they put there, which is so interesting about humans. I don't know why we have that.
I think it's the frequencies in the notes. Like I think the frequency.
So what do you mean by that?
Well, like do you know the difference between like a major and a minor scale?
Yep.
So, like, I think it's probably that, right? Like, it's a different frequency that makes it sound different. And, like, hearing a minor scale, like, you know that's a negative kind of sadder song versus hearing a major scale, you're like, oh, that's a happier, more upbeat song. So I think it's something like that. But it is interesting because there's so many different things that affect people. Like, I know during COVID, Kanye was doing this thing where he was doing, like, light therapy with his songs. So he'd, like, get in a dome, do, like, a concert for, like, 50 people in there, and then have it be, like, a specific shade of purple to, like, elicit a certain emotion and feeling and all that.
Dude, he's on another level.
Yeah.
He really
There's a lot of creativity there. Like, have you ever had, like, the strip lights, though, and, like, you change the color and, like...
Yes.
And with those, you kind of feel, like, the difference, right? It's like, oh, I'm in the blue room or I'm in a red room. Like, you kind of feel a slight...
I think that's kind of more cultural based, though, right? Because, like, certain colors are associated with certain things culturally. Mm-hmm. Like, blue is kind of associated with gloom a little bit, a little sadder. It's also, like, stuff that's in the world, too. Like, on a rainy day, you might feel a little more sad. And blue is sort of associated with that, I guess. But it's like you said, there's something wired in us I don't know what the right way to say it. It's primary to who we are in some respect. Yeah,
like we're all affected by weird, universal, environmental world changes that I think we don't realize. Mm-hmm. Like an interesting thing, someone was telling me about like collective conscious, like we're all connected or something. And like, I didn't necessarily believe everything he said, but I started noticing that like it was 3 years ago, and then I'd be working at the pizza place and like, say we make 200 pizzas a night, and then, you know, you get like 2 Hawaiian pizzas. Then all of a sudden one night you get like 30. And you're like, what? Like, why are 30 different people ordering this pizza?
Because it's the best pizza, but...
Well, debatable. But if there's like no promotion, no nothing, just all of a sudden 30 Hawaiian pizzas one night. Mm-hmm. And like you'll get that with different things, 30 Hawaiians or a dumb amount of Supreme pizzas or whatever. It's like, why tonight out of all nights? Or sometimes like you get no orders for like an hour and a half, and then you get 7 orders in like 10 minutes. You're like, what? Why did these 7 people decide right now? And so I think there's got to be some weird thing that like affects people kind of on like a certain, like maybe a pressure change like affects everyone in a certain way, and it kind of causes people to do different things.
I don't know. I mean, that's for a mind greater than me, for sure.
Yeah.
But I notice that, and I know what you mean when you say that, for sure. Yeah. It's all about like perspective too. One thing I saw when I was driving over, I thought might be interesting to mention. So there was a driver that was driving like super slow, and I was running a little late. Mm-hmm. And so I was like frustrated by that, moved into the left lane, and I looked over, and it was this older guy with his wife. He was probably in his 70s or 80s, like an elderly guy. And he had this like English hat on, and he was smiling as he was driving. And it like totally changed my perspective. I was just like, this guy's enjoying his drive. Why do I deserve to get somewhere faster? You know, this guy's enjoying his time out. He probably doesn't get to drive very often. Mm. So it all just kind of changes based on perspective too.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's kind of, I don't know, I guess I don't think about that too much, but like the world is really just how we perceive it a lot of the time. You know, it's like, if you think everything's negative, then like you live in a shitty world. But if you think everything's positive, you live in a pretty good world. Mm-hmm. And so like stuff like that. And I think it's always good to have moments where like you kind of get brought back and you kind of see things from a different perspective, and then just kind of like, oh, I guess I didn't think about that. You know, like something I've done just since I've gotten older, just you meet different people across different walks of life. And I think too, just people our age are like starting to figure out who they are and kind of start to branch out in different directions. And then you start meeting those people, start kind of talking to them, learning about their beliefs and whatnot, and then I think that just kind of expands my mind. You know, I always like learning from different people. Like I like kind of hearing what you got going on with insurance or what other people are doing in different businesses, and like
definitely
how can I apply that to myself? How can I apply that to my business? And I don't know. I guess I just like learning different things about different people. Like I think like doing more of this podcast will be really fun because it's like, all right, cool. Let me pick your brain and figure out this, that, and the other.
You'll get widely different responses. Mm-hmm. You know. I agree. People are so complex, and I think that's part of the problem with basing everyone on their worst days, right? I just saw a movie on Monday. It's a new movie out called Anatomy of a Fall. I think it's a French movie, but super, super good, and I would recommend it. But one of the kind of themes and points of that movie, and it's a cliffhanger ending, so you can kind of decide what you want the end to be, what you feel with it. But one of the points that they make is that on their worst day, anybody can be portrayed as a monster. If you're looking at like their worst impulses, the worst decisions that they've made. But the truth is often much more balanced. People are complex. So I think it's tough to judge someone based on their worst day or on one decision that they've made in the past. Now, with some people, it's indicative of a larger problem and a larger thing that's going on in their lives. But we're so impulse-based as humans. So I think it's tough to really get a good judge for someone just based off of one action that they may have done.
Yeah, like we can have a lot of black and white thinking, which that's how Sith think. Good callback. But no, I think that's like something I've tried to realize a lot more in the last year is that like everything's really on a spectrum. Like it's never just this or that. It's like this person's terrible, this person's great. It's like they exist on a spectrum. Like they might be 89% terrible, but they're not like fully terrible.
Yeah, it depends on the day and the circumstances too. Like anybody can make the right decision. Anyone can make the wrong decision. You know, you have every day you have new decisions that you can make and how you approach things. Just like the guy driving on the freeway today, you know, he was smiling as he was driving. Maybe he had a reason to, maybe he didn't. He was just enjoying what he was doing. Even though my perspective before I saw that was he's a slow driver driving on the road. He's got no business being out here. I got to get past him as fast as possible. It gave me a little bit of pause to kind of think about the world in a different way. And then it got me smiling just thinking about it too, because I was happy that he was enjoying himself. He's a complete stranger I don't even know.
Or his wife could have said a joke, he laughed, but then he's just miserable every other minute of the day.
Yeah. I guess, and like it's like you said, it's how we perceive things, right? Every day is different. Every person is different.
Mm-hmm. Something I realized too is like I put a lot of like my thoughts on things or like what I think is going to happen, what I think they're going to be and all that. And that just like creates a lot of anxiety. So just trying to kind of take things as they are and just kind of evaluate and whatnot.
Yeah. You got to do that when you're our age, you know, because hopefully we've got some measure of what our values are at this age that we can then build off of and expand as we get older. But to a certain extent, you're kind of learning what your values are going to be as you try new things too, and as you make mistakes or do have great successes in certain things. That's kind of not just professionally how your 20s can be an area that you grow, but also, not just professionally, but also personally. As, you're kind of faced with different circumstances and how you approach them and what your mentality is with everything.
Yeah, that could be hard because I think like now I'm trying to think of like, ooh, branding, like that's going to be fun. Like how do I kind of create my personal brand and figure that out? And like one of the worries is like, I'm going to be so different in 10 years. Like if I start a brand now, like how am I going to like keep that consistent for 10 years? But then I was talking to Forrest after the event and he kind of put an idea in my head and I realized like, instead of it, like at first I'm like, I'm going to have a brand name, then I'm going to have like Atkinson Homes. That'll be a division of it. And I'll just have like a whole personal brand and all these different divisions. And then he was like, just have one. Like, just have one. I was like, okay, I'll just do one.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about like brands like, he used Apple as an example, but I thought of Amazon as a really good one because they start off just selling books. But it's like a one word like brand and you could just expand that out to anything. And now they like sell everything. And so like the brand name wasn't like what they did at the time. It was just like a general term. It wasn't like bookstore. It was Amazon,
Right.
And so they can keep Amazon now. They don't have to be like a website that sells literally everything. It's still Amazon.
Yeah, and that kind of goes to like what we were talking about even towards the start of the podcast, where we looked at you're selling yourself when you're selling real estate, insurance. If you're selling car parts, whatever you're selling yourself the same way you're selling the product. So I think basing that brand in whatever you're selling on what you're personally good at and how you like what your ideal customer when you're selling one thing is usually going to be your ideal customer selling another thing too, because that's the people that you connect with the best. Mm-hmm. So I think that's good advice to kind of keep it more branded around yourself than what you're doing at the specific moment.
Yeah, and I'm trying to find my like brand voice and all that a lot more. Like I've been more present on social media the last couple of weeks trying to just kind of find that voice, because I realized like when I was 19 first getting into real estate, like I'd made like a couple of YouTube vlogs before that, like just having fun because it was COVID summer and whatnot, and I was like dropped out and all that. I'm like, yeah, let's just do some stuff. And I just had fun making them. Nothing crazy, nothing like super polarizing on there or anything, but just very clearly like I was 19. And so I got my license and then I applied or reached out to a bunch of different places to try to get an interview. This one place actually like scheduled me because like of the 5, 3 of them didn't give me the time of day. And then I got an interview scheduled there. And then like a day after they booked it, they're like, so we looked at your YouTube page and we just feel like you're not a good fit. So we're going to cancel the interview.
Oh no.
And I was like, really? So then after that point, I'm like, I just can't be myself. I can't be like a 19-year-old. And then like everyone in my office was like 40, 50, 60. I was like, oh, wow, I really can't be myself. And then I remember like I wanted to start a podcast at the time. And like someone was like, don't do it. Don't start the podcast. Kidding me?
You got a lot of negative people in your life at this point, dude.
You
gotta get some positive people.
Yeah. Well, we're working on it. So I mean, that was that. And then I guess I just kind of like took that to heart too much. I was like, I just got to be like quiet, buttoned up. And then I just kind of had this idea of like how I was supposed to be. And then now I'm like, well, I should just trying to kind of find like, can't fully just be me, because that's my like personality isn't 100% like professional, which I would assume most people's aren't. So just trying to find that like, showing like who I actually am as opposed to like who I want to be perceived as. Yeah,
definitely. I think as you get older, you start to realize that most people in their professions are faking it. Like everybody, executives, just the same way as the everyday staff people are faking it to a certain extent. And that's probably a reason why most people hate their jobs, because they can't be authentic at work. I think being genuine and authentic, especially in sales, like what we work within, is really important to do, because nothing turns somebody off to a sale faster than if you've got a salesperson's voice on and you're like, if I was selling state minimum coverages and being a pushy salesman, like you can be a genuine, authentic, kind person while also being able to ask for the close and do things that are necessary when you're working within a sales role. And that's an area that I think a lot of people take a misstep and they're looking at diving into sales or working within their careers overall.
Yeah, I think like you have to care for the client, but you also have to be a salesperson at the end of the day. Because like sometimes like sales is a solution, it's, you're not selling someone something that they don't need. You're kind of giving someone like a tool that they can use, or maybe not a tool, but you're you're helping someone, like they have a need, they came to you with that need, and then you're kind of alleviating that pain, solving that, or whatever you want to use there. And so, just lost my train of thought. I've been doing that like crazy lately, and it's not good. But no, so you're like providing a solution for people. And so it's like when you go in and you be salesy and then you try to go for the close, I think some people can be like, oh, like that's bad. Like you're trying to sell someone on something they don't need. But it's like, not necessarily. Like, yeah, you might be having someone get more than the state minimums, but it's because you're covering them and you're doing a good job for them, and they're going to be protected down the road.
Right. And you have to recognize too that like me and my business, I'm not for everybody. Some people might want low commitment, low amounts of coverage, not think about it at all, and then if something happens, it happens. Plenty of people go without a claim for 40 years. I mean, it's true. There are those unicorns out there that never have to use their insurance. And those people are going to require a lot less attention usually than someone that has used it previously in the past. Like the agent to customer relationship for those people that have had to use their insurance in the past is a lot more important because a lot of times they've had poor experiences with their old agents. So it depends a little bit on the customer, I would say too.
Yeah. You should do a little insurance event.
I should, man. Yeah.
You could probably use the space.
I could.
Hit up Forest.
Yeah. I think it'd be fun.
No, it was fun just to have that space, and then that just also kind of like, I don't know, just kind of relax, be yourself, and then just people get to see you in a different light. Like a couple of the guys there, one of them, I met him at an open house, and so like,
yeah, I was talking with him.
Yeah, so like being at an event is a lot different from like, I'm at an open house, I'm trying to like, be businessy, and so it was
last
cool.
night was very casual.
Yeah, it was nice.
It was nice.
Yeah, nice to just kind of hang out, have the projectors going, and just have a good time. It's cool just to see different faces too. Just different people coming out. I think like in the future, I want to do try to get something where it's just like all sorts of strangers, just fill the room, and then just kind of have it be like a little party,
Yeah, and I think like that type of environment would be fun to host from an insurance perspective. And then also like a seminar I've thought about doing in the past too, just kind of talking about some of the concepts that we went through tonight at the start. Because a lot of people have told me, customers of mine, that no agent previously had ever explained what their actual bones of their policy were with the coverage that they had in place, which is mind-blowing to me. But I guess that's a big point too, as you're looking at stuff, is that you can't assume you know what your competition is doing, whether it's in a positive way or a negative way. You kind of got to get some actual customer responses to find out what your competition is really up to, because you can assume the best of your competition. It turns out that you actually have that as an advantage that you can lean into, and then vice versa. You might be assuming something negative about your competition that is actually one of their strengths. So I'm trying to think. You could probably ask all of your clients a question to get feedback out of them. I'm just trying to think like how you go about that. Like, what were some of you? I guess what led you to reaching out to another insurance agent, or I guess like. Or like set that up for post-bind when I'm setting a new customer on their new policy, like because I go through signing their documents and getting the contingencies done.
That, though, like find the motivation, right? Like they're reaching out to you for some reason. Like if it's someone that already has a policy, it's like, okay, why are you going from that other person? Like where do they fall short? And like how can I make sure that I provide value in that area for you? And
I do ask that question a lot. Okay. I'll ask, why are you shopping around for insurance? What are you looking to do on your quote here today? Because my initial question a lot of times is, am I doing a comparison today to something you already have in place, or am I starting something up brand new from scratch? Because sometimes you'll have people that have had a gap in coverage. They've lapsed, their policy had lapsed previous, and you're looking to start it up from scratch. Other times and more commonly, you'll be doing a comparison. And then that's an easy way to ask then, so what has you looking for a quote here today? Most people will say price because that's the easiest one and that's the lowest commitment one for them. But if you dig a little deeper, a lot of times you can find out they don't have a good relationship with their agent. They were undercovered on a claim. They heard bad things about the company itself. So there's lots of opportunity out there when you ask questions like that too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Just like, I guess, what are like the most common objections that you get? Like, you're reaching out to someone reaches out to you, then they're like, X reason I can't move forward with this. Like, what's the biggest?
Yeah, it's too expensive is my most common one, or the price isn't right. Sometimes you'll have people that are set in place on those state minimums. They say, I want this amount of coverage. And then, like I said, I've got a hard line in the sand on that. Another one which people use to just kind of delay it indefinitely is that they have to talk to their spouse about it. So I always try and set up my closing meetings if I can with both, if it's a couple, with both the husband and the wife present. Because if the husband signs off on something the wife wasn't on board with, it's not a good experience, even if I get them as a customer. Because a lot of times then the wife will be the one that's calling with questions and problems and so on and so forth. So
do you need both signatures though?
No, just one or the other, just the primary.
Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But also what's interesting is that with some companies, some products that I write, you can swap who the primary is, and one might be cheaper than the other one based off their insurance score, like I was talking to you earlier about.
So like what advice would you give to someone who's, younger, early 20s, that's like trying to build their insurance score, trying to just kind of get to a point where like, yeah, it's maybe more expensive for me now, but like in 2-3 years, let me like cut costs on this like crazy.
Yeah, definitely. So I would say have coverage in place of at least 100, 300, 100 for your liability limits. I like even insuring a level above that at 250, 500, 250. And there's a few reasons for that. I would say the main one is with property damage. $100,000 is great for any single car accidents or even multi-car accidents. But specifically in Minnesota, every year we have one of those pile-up situations on 94 or one of the big freeways where 5 or 6 or 7 cars are all damaged and totaled. And to protect against that amount of vehicles, I like having $250,000 worth of coverage for property damage. So invest. It's an investment in your future premiums in some respect, in those higher amounts of coverage early on. And then another thing I would say is make sure that you pay your bill on time, because most companies, my current company included, has like a good payer discount for if you haven't had a gap in the bill that you've paid previously. And then the other big one is make sure that you've got continuous amounts of coverage, because if you have a gap in coverage, even if it's for a couple of days, that can hurt your score hugely, and your premiums are going to skyrocket when you have to look to set that policy up elsewhere. Also, the options might be more limited for the down payments of those options if you had a gap in coverage. Like for me, a lot of times I'll have to write it with a double premium to start and then a free 6th month on a 6-month policy. So you make a double payment, 4 payments in a row, and then your 6th month is free since you're covering it with the down payment. But that down payment can be kind of costly and tough to keep up with, especially if you're in your 20s. So make sure your coverage stays continuous, pay your bill on time, and have those higher amounts of coverage in place would be my 3 pieces of advice.
So pretty similar to kind of like credit score, like utilize it, pay it, and then use it, I guess. Yeah,
because they're tied together. Your credit score is going to impact your insurance score and vice versa too.
Yeah. So I guess, boil it down to really just, be a decent insurance holder and you get a better score.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Interesting. So I guess what are some like the biggest like lapses in knowledge that you notice with people? Like people walk in and they're like, oh, I thought XYZ. And you're like, no, not even close.
Right. So one is full coverage. So it's kind of like a blanket term that gets thrown around in insurance, full coverage, right? A lot of people think that means that if they get into an accident, they're fully covered, which makes sense. I mean, that's what the term is, right? Well, what that really means is that you've got comprehensive and collision coverages in place. Collision being for head-on-head accidents with another vehicle, and then comprehensive being for sort of the everything else coverage, like if your car is stolen, if there's a weather-related incident, if there's a fire, any of those types of things that take place. But a lot of people think that that includes their liability limits, that if they have damage to another vehicle or they injure someone else, they're going to be fully covered on full coverage. Well, that's not the case. You have a specified amount of coverage in place for those liability limits, and then you have the comprehensive and collision coverages as well when you have full coverage. That's a huge misconception. I would say another one that is really big is that for people that are our age that are still living with their parents, because there's a rule in place where you can stay on your parents' health insurance until age 26, people assume that that applies to their auto and their renters or home insurance as well. That is not the case. If you are out of your parents' household and no longer in college, you should be on your own insurance policy. You shouldn't be on their policy. And there's a few reasons for that. I would say one is it's important to start building your coverage early on with your own individualized insurance score to help your rates when you're in your late 20s. So that's one reason why it's good to be on your own amount of coverage. Another one is that if you're on your parents' policy, but let's say you live 20 minutes away in your own apartment, if that's not specifically marked on your parents' insurance policy that the vehicle is garaged at that other location, that could be a misrepresentation. And if that's the case, that's grounds to have a claim declined in some cases, especially with companies where you don't have an agent that's working for you and able to advocate on your behalf. So if you're one of those kind of secondary companies that you can purchase online for, just automatically without an agent being attached to it. So that's one piece I would advise, and reason why it's important to be on your own coverage if you're living out of your parents' household and you're no longer in school. If you're a student away at college, that's a little different situation. You probably want to stay on your parents' insurance, but if you're full-time out of their household, I would recommend being on your own insurance policy.
Would that be like, what do you say, misrepresentation if like, say you're from Minnesota, but you go to California for school and then you bring your car with you, like, and you get in trouble there or get into an accident, like how does that play out? Yeah,
so that in that scenario, that's a student away at college. So technically your primary address is still your parents' home. So in most cases you're covered, having that listed as they have it if you're listed on their policy. Now, if let's say you had gone to school out in California and you decide to stay there long term, that would become a problem then. You should not be listed on your parents' insurance if you're not going to school specifically for the reason of going to school. You should be written on your own insurance policy at that point. That can also become a problem for the agent of record because you have to be licensed in the state in order to be able to write those coverages and write those policies. So for me, for example, I'm licensed in Minnesota or Wisconsin. If I had someone that moved to California, I wouldn't be able to write their policy unless I got licensed in that state. And some agents, if they have a big clump of business that have moved to one area, they'll get licensed in the state just for the commissions and the renewal premiums. But in most cases, people are going to be specified to the area that they're living within. So for me, it's Minnesota, Wisconsin. Other people, Wisconsin, Michigan, whatever that looks like in the Midwest.
So not to change subjects too much, but I've been curious.
Sure.
Because I got a lot of vinyl questions. So I've been going to the Garth and whatnot, and they have like the dollar vinyl section in the back, and I've been getting like some older ones, like stuff from 60s, 70s, like Rod Stewart.
Yeah, dude.
I can't even remember what I have. I have a Rod Stewart, because some of them are mine, some of them are my girlfriend's, like Rod Stewart, Ted Nugent, Chicago.
You got to get some jazz, dude.
I should. I got like a brass album, so they were playing like Sugar Sugar, Otis Redding songs, just a couple like bigger songs from like the 70s, and then it was all like brass. Get
some Miles Davis, get some Yusuf Lateef in your collection. And Ella Fitzgerald, dude. Got to get some Ella. She's the best.
I feel like I could find some of that at Agartha. I like it there. I think it's a really cool spot.
Yeah, I do. Well, they've got the unreleased ones, which is nice. Well, last time we were there, we each kind of picked up like a bootleg.
Yeah. So I went there,
which is fun.
Did you see the Mac Miller, the Tiny Desk vinyl that went?
Yes,
they had that there when I went there last. I was like,
how much was it?
Like $25.
Okay. See, I've thought about getting that one, but it's so short. Is the performance is really good, but it's only like 15 minutes long.
Yeah.
So that's tough to justify the cost for me.
Do you think it transfers well to vinyl?
I think it probably would. Yeah, because it's a live recording. So.
Oh yeah.
If you think about that, yeah.
So what like translates bad to vinyl? Because I know you're saying like Yeezus would not work, which a lot of techno sounds and all that.
Yes. Too electronic doesn't work. Now I will say a couple weeks ago it was actually really fun. I went to like a rave concert, which is not a usual thing for me. It's my first one I'd been to like that, but I love concerts. And I went and saw this artist that I really loved called Zoo, and I picked up their vinyl, and that one transferred over pretty well, and it's a little bit more techno beats, but not very harsh techno. It's more like kind of chill vibes, and that translates over pretty well. So like, I don't think Yeezus, other ones that haven't transferred over well are like pop records that have too many loud sounds. Like I love Post Malone, but he doesn't transfer over super well to vinyl, which is kind of
like the
surprising.
Reverb?
Yeah, like the reverb, exactly. So I think some players probably keep up better with that, but for mine specifically, unfortunately, his stuff doesn't transfer over the best. A 12-karat Toothache transferred over pretty well, but Beer Bongs and Bentleys is more harsh noises.
Yeah. So I would think his new one would probably transfer pretty well, though, because that's more so just guitar and vocals.
Well, yeah, his new one is more acoustic, so I've wanted that record. I think I'll probably pick it up here in December, I would guess.
I'm going to let it sit for a while, but after first listen, I'm like, oh, I have to get this on vinyl.
I loved that record, dude. Too Cool to Die. I mean, come on.
I like almost everything on it. Like, I don't really
Or Morning. You know Morning?
There's about half of them that I've listened to way too much, and Morning is not that half. But
Okay.
I like if I heard it, I would. Is that the one that starts like oxytocin, or is that?
No, it's the one where he's like, don't wanna sober up.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Super cool.
Yeah,
And then I love Green Thumb too.
Mm-hmm.
The closer. So good.
Have you seen him play that live?
No,
It looks
but dude,
difficult.
I was hoping he was taking the record on tour because I really wanted to see it in person over the summer. But he was taking like an international tour. So if he's coming to town next year, I think I'm definitely gonna try and go.
Yeah,
We
that'd be
should
cool.
go, honestly. Yeah.
I wonder. I guess I haven't seen like an acoustic performance. Like, does that, like, how's the audio on that?
I think pretty good. Yeah, I mean, most of my concerts I've gone to be honest, have been rap or pop. I think John Bellion's pretty close though, and I saw him my freshman year of college, and he was amazing. That was probably like top 3 concerts I've been to. He was amazing.
So I don't know too much about his music, but is he kind of one of those artists that like can do anything? Because I've seen like not like a Charlie Puth, but kind of like a Charlie Puth.
Yeah, and I would say even like Charlie Puth doesn't rap, but Bellion has like a couple songs where he raps and he can spit. But he's just got such a cool voice, and like I really respect musicians. Like I did choir and theater in high school, but I wouldn't consider myself like a musician. I can't write or compose music. One of my good friends, he does though, and he can like play the guitar. And I've always thought that was super cool. You know, people that are wired that way. But Bellion, he's definitely got like that songwriter, and just like the way that he writes his music is really cool to me, because the sounds don't seem like they should work together, but they sound so good. Like Guillotine, was it Fate of the World? Like he's just got so many good songs.
I think it's really interesting watching people like create music and watching different like producers and stuff like that. And that's something that like I want to do going forward. Like ideally at some point this year, kind of get into like making music ish. Like I have a guitar. I've been trying to like learn how to play that a little bit more.
Nice.
The goal is to get a keyboard on Black Friday. And then I have like GarageBand, which I haven't used as much as I should, but just kind of trying to figure out things from there, and then just kind of having fun with it. Like, I don't know, I listen to so much music. I like hear music in my head all the time. It's like, why can't I just, like, I want to get that out.
Yeah, dude. I've got huge respect for musicians, and then also for like artists. Because for me, I can't draw for crap, dude. I suck at drawing. It was actually kind of funny in college. Probably my best decision that I made with my degree was when I was going into my junior year, they changed, I was a marketing major, and they changed the track where you could pick a concentration. And I chose graphic design as my concentration because I knew nothing about it, and I wanted to give it a shot and give it a try. And I found that I wasn't very naturally gifted at it, but it really stretched me and helped me to, like, for one thing, recognize that that's not an area I want to work within long term, but then also really challenge me in my work that I was doing. Because most people know business classes they're hard to a certain extent, but not like engineering is.
Yeah.
So I wanted to try something that was going to challenge me a little more. But people that have that natural ability to do that, I find so cool to just sit down and draw. And I see some people like that on social media, and I've huge respect for that, for artists in that way.
I think you can create some of that though. Like I started drawing recently, like doing different art projects and stuff like that, and I hadn't touched art in like 10 years or something. Like I haven't done anything since like middle school, and now it's like, oh, I like just paint a little bit here and there. I would go to the dollar section for the records, and I would like buy a couple things. If I didn't like it, I'd spray paint it, then like do some art on it and stuff like that.
Sure.
So just like things like that, and then just kind of trying to be more creative with things like that. Like I don't know if you asked me a year ago if I'd be drawing and making like abstract drawings and little paintings and stuff like that, I'd be like, no, not like no chance. I would never do that. But I was like, oh, like I just kind of, I guess that was one of those things that like in the back of my head, I'm like, it would be cool to do this. Like I have a lot of respect for people that can do that.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to start.
May as well try it out. Yeah.
Yeah.
See how it goes.
Yeah. Because it's like with art, it's not necessarily about like, it's not about like doing anything in particular. It's just about like doing what you feel and just kind of like shutting your brain down and just going. It's not like, let me plan out what I'm going to do. It's a lot of times, at least for me, it's like, let's just put pen to paper and then go. And then you just kind of like figure it out as you go along. Like if I'm drawing something at first, it's like, okay, like I drew the sun thing the other day, and I'm like, okay, I want to draw a sun. So I start with like the circle. Then from there I did like triangles on both ends. And then from there I looked at like different like different sun drawings, and then I saw like the way that they had the spires and stuff coming out.
Mm-hmm.
And I did like different ones in between each one. And I'm like, oh, I got to do the face. What do I do? And then I looked up like different anime things. I did like half of the face one way, half of the face another way, and then just kind of keep adding in different things here and there. And then I kind of like that. And I just like take headphones, blast the new Post Malone album, and just like zone out. It's like the best thing ever.
It's probably a good album to draw to.
Oh yeah, it's really good. So,
yeah. I've been thinking about that too this last week because I was looking at a watch that I kind of wanted to buy. I'm still debating because it'd be a more expensive purchase if I got it. But there was a limited edition of the watch box that came out that I'm going to just show it to you because I thought it was so cool. But you can't buy them anywhere because they were so limited when they released. So I'm thinking about maybe like trying to recreate it myself or hire someone to do the same. That's kind of what it looked like.
Oh.
It's meant to model. It's the watch that was worn in Interstellar, and then the watch box is kind of meant to model that as well, like the end of the movie. But I think the design is so cool. But that's been kind of an interesting thing, like thinking through how I would try and recreate it, what materials I might use, because all of that is foreign to me and brand new if I was to try and give it a shot.
Yeah, I have no idea how you would do that. My guess would be you probably want to get like a square mold or something, and then just pour like different layers of like epoxy or something, and just kind of stack it. But I've
thought about that, but like if you look at the stuff, they're all individual pieces that's being used on it. Yeah. So like if I could try and recreate, and also then cost becomes a factor too. Like how worth it is it for me to try it and fail it maybe, versus if I could just hire someone that might enjoy doing it naturally too and have some of the materials already ready.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're going to have so many leftover materials if you do that yourself. Because it's like if you're going to do, I don't know, like one project, you're probably going to have to get like X amount of stuff and then you use like 12% of it.
True. Yeah. And try it wrong a couple of ways before I finally get it the right way.
Yeah. That's kind of the thing with like the art supplies I have now. It's like I bought it for like one thing. It's like, oh, now I have all this extra stuff, which I don't mind. Like I'll just find more things to do with it down the line. And it's, I don't know, I like art. Like it's so cheap to get into it. Like use printer paper to draw on, get like a few things here or there. Like I've got stuff that keeps me busy for a while, and it's like I spent maybe $100 on everything. Maybe. And that's like I could just lock myself in my room for like a week and just make art.
Yeah, I don't know if I could do that, but I think it's cool to have like kind of relaxing activities like that. Like one thing I love doing is heading down to the Mia downtown and just walking around for a couple hours. Like I love paintings. I especially love nature paintings. I find those super, super cool. Anything that I can look at and then it looks like it's in motion already, like I can picture the scene in my head, I think is super, super interesting and fun to do. So like, I think that's maybe why I have such a respect for people that can draw that way and do that too, because I'm just so taken back by their work all the time. But I think having relaxing activities like that is good, kind of to balance out some of the other things I like to do that are more media based, like with movies and music or whatever.
Have something kind of more like natural, I guess.
Yeah, boots on the ground kind of thing, you know, like where you feel more intelligent as you're still relaxing and like you're still accomplishing something personally, which I do get with movies sometimes. But I mean, it's so easy to just fall into like daytime television too, you know, especially if you're really working hard and you're stressed. That's something that I definitely struggle with here and there. Or like sports even can be like that.
Yeah. Have you ever thought about getting a tattoo?
Dude, I'll tell you, I'm not on the tattoo wave.
No?
Yeah. I don't know what it is. I think it's too big of a commitment for me. It's kind of like what you were saying for like building a brand, right? You know, I don't know what I'm going to be like in 10 years. And so if I was to get a tattoo, I'd want it to be something that I know is going to be valuable to me for the rest of my life. And I don't like the idea of it. So, but I've got close friends. My brother, he's got 3 tattoos. My other close friend, he's got his whole legs pretty much just all tatted up, and he loves them. So I've got no other problem with other people doing it. I think it's fine. I think it's hot on women, so I'm not opposed to tattoos. But for me personally, I don't think I'll tap in.
Mm-hmm. I had that thought before I got mine, and then I was like, oh, I love it. Like I fell in love once I got it. But
what is your tattoo?
It's a patch. So it So start off with like last December, I want to get a tattoo. I was like, I want to get something that's important, but I don't know like what's important to me. And then in like February, I went to Electric Fetus and I got Yay and Man on the Moon. And then I had Yay, and the wording is I hate being bipolar. It's awesome. And then that's like what that stands for.
Okay.
And then so it's a patch because like I just want to add more to it than just having the lettering. So then it was going to be a patch, and then it was going to be stylized after like a patch that my grandma put on a quilt for me when I was 3.
That's cool. What's the little tapering?
That's the needle, so I can have something like drawing, like sewing it onto my arm.
Okay.
I just don't know what I would do later.
It looks kind of like a stone tablet is what it reminds me of. Like an ancient, maybe that's from my perspective too. And I haven't seen like what the artwork that was behind it, but I think it looks cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's all pretty much like came from my brain. Like I just drew it like really shittily, and then she's like, all right, let me go come up with a design from that. And then she came up with this. I was like, yeah, let's do it. But I think remembering back now, I remember like I didn't realize that she was going to fill in around the letters until she already did it. So that was one where I was like, what? Oh. Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's like, that was something I didn't realize, is that like when you're getting a tattoo, it's not like 100% exactly what you want. Like you're working with the artist to come up with a piece of art that they're going to put on you.
Yeah.
But this is like over 90% of exactly what I wanted. And I'm still like very happy with it. And like, if it looked the exact way I wanted it to, I think I would still feel the same way about it.
Right.
It's just like in the moment you want to be like extra particular because you're like, it's going to be on me forever.
Well, it's like a romance phase with it too. Like you're so excited about getting a tattoo, and that's like, oh, I've got this forever now. It was kind of funny last summer. I was down in Florida with my family, with my mom, my dad, and my sister, and they were all getting tattoos for the trip. Like they were doing it as a trip thing. But the night before, my dad was wavering on the tattoo he was going to get, and he was like scrolling through tattoos online, and I was freaking out at the idea of him getting like just a crappy tattoo that was going to be on him forever. Thankfully, he found one that he liked and he enjoys it, but just like the panic of that, I think kind of stems from like me thinking about if I was to do the same thing that he was doing. It was like more about me than than being worried about him.
Yeah, so like I guess I kind of started on it, but like so at first it's like, oh, if I get a like what's going to be something that's like important to me for my whole life? And like mental health is obviously one of those things. But I guess my thought was, because I'm going to keep getting tattoos, is like I want to get something that at the very least means a lot to me and who I am right now, because I'm definitely going to change like 10, 20, 40 years from now. I hope I'm not the same person. But I think like having that tattoo to kind of like highlight who you were as a person, maybe past struggles, past successes or something like that, then that's kind of like it's kind of like a scrapbook or something. Like you go back and look on it, but it's like physically on you. Like this, you know, I got it more so because like I was like struggling with mental health for a while. And so like having that, it's like maybe 10 years down the road, it's like I can be in a very, very good place. Or even now, like when I'm in a better place, like I look at that and I like, it's kind of a memory from like, oh, like I was not doing great for a little bit there. And it's like, I don't know, it's nice to have it.
It's a cool way to think about it. Yeah. And I mean, who knows? Maybe I will in the future. That's just kind of where I'm at now.
Yeah, I mean, each their own, right? Like maybe you have a kid and then you're like, oh, I'll get his name tattooed on me or something like that. You know, I don't know. I like the aesthetic. I like having them. Like my plan is probably go
full sleeve, or what do you think?
Half sleeve, elbow down both sides probably, because like I don't know. I like working out and trying to be like in shape and all that. And it would make me sad if I just covered my whole body and then it's like, oh man, like I can't like. You know, I got in shape, I got like muscle definition. It's like, it's not there. So that's why I do like elbow down. If I get out of shape, everything's on the market. But I do elbow down. I thought about having one like, you kind of have this like side region here where like your abs are there and then like your ribs are there, but then you have that like empty space. Yeah. So I thought about doing that. Like it'd be cool if there's something going down there, like onto the top of my hip. But I got to figure that out. I'm going to get one on my leg that's like this big. It's gonna be like a lotus. So like Mac Miller has this lotus tattoo on his neck, so it's gonna be that lotus in a pool of water surrounded by a blue and red koi swimming in a circle together. Okay, I'm
gonna look up Mac Miller's lotus. I'm sure I've seen it.
Yeah, it's a black lotus, but it's pretty cool. Either that.
I'm definitely on board with a Mac tattoo, dude. That's my guy. Okay, yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah, if I was not a realtor and slightly drunk, I would totally get his lotus tattoo on my neck. Or like the eagle or something.
Yeah, I mean, Neck or face tattoos are tough. At least working in a public space like we do, where we're marketing ourselves. I think working for an employer, nowadays people are more open to that. I mean, the kind of old guard that was saying tattoos aren't professional, they're kind of gone now. That's not as much of a sentiment with bosses. I could give a crap if people have a tattoo if I'm hiring them. I guess unless they're marketing themselves to people, it's a little different.
I think it depends on what it's a tattoo of too. Like if you have something, like for me, I really like meaningful tattoos. Like I wouldn't get like, I don't know, I wouldn't just get something that's like, oh, that's cool. Like, I don't know. Like, oh, I saw a tiger at the zoo the other day, so I got a tiger tattoo. Like to me, that'd be kind of, I mean, why would I do that, Also, I'm not a huge fan of like big tattoos unless they're like complex. It's like if I got a tiger that took up my whole chest, it's like, well, that's a lot of real estate to take up with one tattoo. Like for my half sleeve, like I want it to be a bunch of different, like I'll do one there, one there, one there. Like I can probably fit like 8 or 10 that are like that size on my arm, and then like fill it in with couple other things, and then like go hand and fingers down the road.
How did you decide like that spot? Because that's a pretty common spot that I've seen. Like. I think it's because you're kind of facing it. So you want your first one to be your most important one that you can see all the time. Whereas there's other tattoos, like if you have one on your back or your shoulder that you don't see as much in your everyday.
Yeah, I've thought about that too. Like just placement and stuff of everything. Because it's like you can only have so many tattoos that are like clearly visible to you. Like here, that's one. And then, I've maybe got spot for like 3 more on my forearm. Or like I can do that space and that space that I'll see. Then after that, it's like anything over there is gone, and then so on and so forth. So I try to be strategic with it. I'm planning out my next couple. I've probably got like 4 planned out. It's kind of scary
nice.
to think about. Yeah, I've got one.
Expensive too. I mean, they're not cheap.
No, but they last forever.
Yeah, that's true.
Like this one was like, I forget. I think I spent like a little over $300 on it, and it was like with like tip and everything. Granted, it took longer because she was like an apprentice, so she's kind of like, still learning a little bit. Like someone who knows their stuff a little bit more would be quicker, but also charge more.
I think that's good quality though. If it was more of an amateur that was doing it.
Thanks.
Yeah.
It could have been slightly higher quality. I was slightly sunburnt when I got it. Just not great for tattoos. Not what you want to do.
Gotcha.
Yeah, if you get one, don't be sunburnt. Don't get it on July 6th. It was a mistake on my part.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. We'll see. I don't know if I'll have one or not. I mean, it feels like most of the closest people in my life have them now. Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of like the odd person out, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's popular.
I don't want to be peer pressured into it is the thing. Like it'd be a huge decision if I was to get one. So I'd have to really think it through and like be cool with it being there forever and like tie that knot and be set on that.
If anything, you could just get one like higher up on your like leg at first and then just kind of see how you like that. Because that'll be something where it's like, go to the bathroom. It's like, oh, I've got a tattoo. And it's like, it'll kind of be there. And that's maybe like an intro. Like if you have something where it's like, oh, it'd be cool to have this, but like, I don't know that I want a visible tattoo or I don't know that I'm ready for something like that then. Maybe just start with something small.
I think if I'm like adjusting appearance for mood or like things that I like, I'm doing that mostly with my hair. Like I've had a mullet before, and when my brother, he's in the military, when he left for basic training, I got my head shaved. So like I've had a bunch of different hairstyles, and like that's cool to me because then it just rolls back. There's not much commitment there. Although the buzz cut sucked. I'm not going to lie. I did not look good with the buzz cut.
Yeah, that's pretty cold.
Yeah, the mullet, though, that was a hit. Or at least I thought it was a hit. I loved it. I thought it was great. Other people, maybe not as much, but whatever. Yeah. I mean, I did it for me more than other people. Mm-hmm. And so I would say that's more how I tap into that than with tattoos.
Yeah, well, tattoos make it like permanent, though. It's like, oh, fuck, I'm stuck with this.
Yeah, and that can be tough. That's just the idea of not liking a tattoo I've got on my body forever. Mm-hmm. Makes me nervous.
Yeah, you could always get a cover up, but then you got to pay for a second tattoo and all that, and then that gets to be a whole thing. I don't know. I try to be like intentional with mine, and like I said, just try to make it something that like it means something to me. It's well thought out, and it's not like, ooh, let me just do this tomorrow, because I think like just in general, like if you make a well thought out decision, it's like looking back on that, you shouldn't be upset at the decision that you made because it's like I thought this through. I did the best that I could in this situation. Like, this is something that I thought I would love forever. And like, if I don't, then, I spent 6 months thinking about it. I, picked something that was core to who I was at the time. And then if I drift away from that in the future, then that's...
Yeah, my uncle did that. He has a tattoo on his shoulder, and he thought through it for years before he actually went through with getting the design done, because I think he drew it up himself, or he like really thought through the idea and the meaning behind it, and then he got the tattoo fully done. So I think, but then there's other people that don't really care that much, you know.
Mm-hmm.
They'll get like little small tattoos on their arms, and it's kind of more like a style trend. You know, that I don't think I could ever see myself doing that.
Mm-hmm.
It would have to be thought out for me to go through with it if I ever went through with it in the future.
Yeah, I had my girlfriend's like, we should get flash tats. And I was like, oh God, I don't know that I want.
No, dude.
Yeah, down the line, like maybe once I have like a couple more, I would like consider something like that. Just throw something on my leg if it's like a cool design. But because for me, like legs will be a spot that like I want that one because I think it'll be really cool. But then after that, it's like, no one's gonna see it. Like you can kind of play around with your legs a little bit more.
True. Yeah.
Not like the lower half, because then that's like short season they come out. But
yeah, and my good friend that has the stuff on his legs right now, they're all like pretty small tattoos. There's a few bigger ones, but a lot of them he's done tattoos for like people in his life, and so they've each got a tattoo to remind him of them. So like one of them is a Scrabble tile for his dad who he used to play Scrabble with. One of them is a cowbell for when he was at his football games, when his family members would ring a cowbell, you know, and like little things like that. So I do think that's cool.
Yeah. I think stuff like that is probably the coolest thing you could do with tattoos, and just like have it be a hidden meaning, you know, and just like something that you have to dig for. Like mine's like, oh, I want mine to be abstract too, so that like you see it and you're like, what is that? Like, and you have to like kind of look at it and it be something that like I know what it is. Because the lotus symbolizes like rebirth and regrowth, and then koi also kind of symbolizes like balance and regrowth and whatnot. And so the whole point of it is like something where, like, no matter who you are, where you are, you can always grow, change, evolve, become a better version of yourself, and like be reborn again. But I think having it be kind of ambiguous, where like I know what it is, but like someone else might not know what that is, kind of adds another layer to it, where it's like, this is for anyone. Like anyone can realize that they can like change their life and be reborn again, like kind of restart. But it's all about like you have to find that.
Yeah,
you know?
And having it tied to Mac Miller too is cool, because that's like one of your favorite artists.
Yeah.
And that's a big theme that he has in a lot of his albums too. I mean, that's huge in Swimming and Circles, which are two of my all-time favorite records. I love those albums.
What do you think about those two? I want to talk about those two, and then we should probably cut this off because we're getting to be
Are we?
almost 2 hours. Yeah, no, we're going. It's
Cool.
good. We could do another one of these at some point.
Yeah, man, I got time, so we can do another one. We can keep rolling. I'm chilling.
Okay, we could do another one a different day because I'm gonna have to run out for appointments and stuff.
Cool. So what do you want to talk about with those records?
So I've been thinking about
which one I prefer. Don't ask me that.
That's a hard one. So for me, I've been thinking, right, because I think Swimming is his best album, but I think Circles had the potential to be way better. Not way better, but better.
Okay.
I think because Circles wasn't finished, it's not as like polished as Swimming. Like I think Swimming has the studio production factor that Circles doesn't have, and I think that gives it that little extra like pop, like come back to earth. Like if that wasn't properly mastered, you know, if they didn't like tweak it all the way that he wanted to, if it sounds slightly off, it's a completely different song. And I think that's like for the whole album. And so like Circles, I think if he was alive 6 more months, sounds way differently.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think, but here's the thing. That's kind of part of the charm of Circles, though, is that it's not as production heavy. It's a much lighter album, and it flows really well together. There's a few tracks on there where production would have helped it, but for the most part, I think it's just a solid record to listen to front to back, and it kind of has that more understated feel to it, which really connects with me, and it fits a specific mood as well. I love listening to it when it's raining, and I love listening to it, or weather, I guess. Like when it's snowing, I listen to it a lot, and it fits a lot of my moods as well. I'll say this, though, on the post-production side of things. One thing I noticed with Mac, especially with Swimming, but you see it, I was noticing it today with Divine Feminine even, his outros to songs where he flips the beat and then, like, basically you have 2 songs within one. A lot of the times with Swimming and his previous records, you don't have that really with Circles. And I think that kind of happens when he was in the studio making those extra beat changes and extra verses. I think Circles probably would have had more of those if he had been fully alive to master it.
Yeah. Well, I think also that time beat switches were more popular. Like I think back to like Sicko Mode. Like to me, it's like, oh wow, 2 songs in one. Like what?
Yeah, 2018 was wild, man.
Yeah,
That
so
was
I
a
feel
good
like
year
that
for
was the
music.
first time. I feel like that was the first time I saw a beat switch like that. Like, have you seen, like, was stuff like that popular before then, or is that kind of like, oh wow? Because now, like on Utopia, I feel like every song's a beat switch. It's like, okay, you can chill out with that.
Yeah, that's a bigger, more common thing in music nowadays for sure. Or like Baby Keem Kendrick, like they've got a couple songs with big beat switches. I think they're one big one. Was it Family Ties?
Yeah.
That I think it's three switches.
Top of the morning.
Yeah. So I think that kind of became like a more common thing after 2018. But I still think like, and that's a good point. Like if they had produced it post, then there probably would have been some beat switches included because it became more of a common thing.
Yeah. I like the way he does them because he's the vocal on the whole track. Like thinking back to Sicko Mode, it's Travis, then Drake. You know, it's not necessarily like they have their own beat to go off of. Like Mac is, I'm going to be the one on all of this.
Right. Yeah. But then sometimes he'll have supplementary voices in the background, not on the primary of the track, but like there's that one song on Swimming that's got Snoop in the background with some background vocals and like a few other tracks that are like that too. Swimming, I will say, is my number 1 album of all time across the board. That's my favorite record because there's not a miss on the whole album. It plays super well together. I love all of the beat switches. The lyrics are really impactful to me, but Circles also hit at a really like important time in my life when I was in college and really like kind of at a transition period in a lot of ways. And also he had passed away, you know, at that point. He was passed away when Swimming released too. But it was more emotional for me at that moment because of that. And Woods is probably like top 5 Mac Miller songs for me. And I love Hand Me Downs too off of Circles. There's so many good songs on that record.
How do you feel about Surf?
Love Surf.
Surf is my favorite. Like that's just the guitar part that
so good.
Yeah.
I love Right too on the deluxe version. Oh
Right.
my gosh.
What's
And Complicated. Good
It's all
News.
pretty good.
They're all good. Yeah, there's not really a bad track on that album.
I Can See is one that I don't love, and like they're not bad. It's just I Can See, and then there's another one that I'm like, they're not my favorites.
What's your favorite on Swimming? Because that's a tough call.
His Spotify version of Dunno.
That's good.
Yeah, that's probably my all-time favorite song. Like I want to get that on vinyl, but it's that, and then his version of Nothing from Nothing, and it's $120 for the vinyl.
Oh, dude, that's hard to swing.
You just can't justify.
You gotta wait till you make a sale or something.
Yeah. Well, even then, it's like $120 for 2 songs, and I'm gonna listen to one of them.
I mean, the most popular one, Ladders, is really good. I do love that record. I think my favorite over time, or at least present, right, because it kind of changes, is the closer, though, for So It Goes. I love the beat on So It Goes, and his verses are just so good. So
I feel like, I don't know, probably 2009, Dunno. I'm trying to remember the name of that one with Snoop that you're talking about. Like Snoop, Thundercat. What's the use?
Well, Small Worlds is really good, too. They're all good. I think the one with Snoop is Wings, right? Or let me look it up.
That's What's the Use? Where he's at the end, he's like, you believe it. You believe it.
Yep, that sounds right.
Yeah, that's What's the Use. Thundercat on the bass.
Thundercat. Yeah, dude. The whole record's good. It's a lot of fun. I love his first record. I love Kids, too. I mean, Max, he's one of my favorite rappers. I just made my top 10 list if you want to go through it a couple days ago.
Yeah.
If we got time, at least.
Yeah.
So let me pull this up. And this is kind of off the dome, so it might change a little bit. But my top 10 that I had drawn up were from 10 to 1. I had Drake in the 10, then Tyler, the Creator, Mac Miller, Kendrick Lamar, Post Malone, MF Doom, Jack Harlow, Andy Mineo, J. Cole, and Kanye at the top. Just because of the breadth of his work. I mean, he's got so many records, and they're pretty much all good.
You excited for his new one?
For sure. Although I've learned with Kanye, I learned with Donda, and previously, you can never trust when he's actually releasing it.
Like
so
2 years from now, but it'll come out.
I mean, Yandi never came out, so
that's a good point.
Yeah, we'll see if it actually does. I mean, because Ty Dollar Signs is attached to it, so I think it will release. Just a question of how and where. It might be another STEM player situation for Donda 2, where I hear it on YouTube and then I can't listen to it on streaming. especially after his like recent comments, or not so recent anymore. But I don't know if any streaming platform is going to pick him up, even if the music is good and it would get a lot of listens. So we'll see.
He just needs one redemption album and then he'll be back. Like that's how it works.
Like the Taylor Swift thing?
Yeah, like if he puts out one good album, everyone's like, "Oh my god, we love Kanye again." He's back.
Oh yeah.
We'll forget what you said, Kanye.
Yeah.
Which I think, like, not to 100% like defend everything he said, but
Excuse
also
me.
like I think something that gets like overlooked with him is that he's an unmedicated bipolar person. Like has a mental health disorder that he struggles with, and like he's in the public limelight, and all that stress definitely doesn't help with that. And he's like it just seems like a tough position to be in. Like I just can't imagine having all that stress to begin with, and then having mental health disorders and all sorts of other stuff on top of that, and then it's like you're expected to be 100% perfect. So I mean, it's somewhat sympathized. Obviously, like you have to, take ownership of certain things that you say, but it's like, well, it's not like he's laying around all day and just super relaxed and he goes on the paparazzi and goes on these crazy rants. It's more so like, this dude is poked and prodded and he's in the public eye and he can't walk outside without getting mobbed by 100 people, and every time he walks they try to take pictures of him and he gets fed up and he's upset, and
Yeah, and he's judged by all the crazy things that he says, when for every crazy thing there's also something that was brilliant that he said too. It's a tough situation, and he's been a lot harder to defend. For the most part, though, I'm pretty good at separating the art from the artist, and I love his music. I think he's done a lot for the world creatively, and it's a shame kind of some of the comments that he said that I wouldn't agree with. But then also, I was talking about this with another friend of mine, that he said the same people that are right now, and I don't want to get too political, but obviously there's a situation going on in the Middle East right now with Israel and Palestine. All the people that were on the Free Palestine wave are the same ones that canceled Kanye when he made his comments too about the Jews. And the anti-Semitism that I've seen over the last month has been crazy, and at a much higher level and more open level than the stuff that Kanye was saying. And it's the same people who are saying it now that had canceled him back when, a few months ago when he was making those comments. So I think there's definitely a level of hypocrisy there. And it's frustrating to me that we can't take a balanced approach at looking at some of the stuff that's going on down there. Like there's really evil on both sides to a certain extent. And like I said, we don't have to get too political, but
I haven't followed that stuff too much just because I try to stay out of it. Like with the Titanic thing, it's like stuff that's in the news. I just honestly just don't really care for.
Yeah, I don't go on Twitter no more. I don't really care much about politics. I think the stuff that's going down there is hard for anybody to understand, that's of our age, because those are things that have been going on for hundreds and hundreds of years. It's like fathers killing fathers, and then the sons rise up, and it's just like a constant state of retribution. And, in America, we have a very strong sense of justice, but in that country and in that part of the world, it's much more revenge focused. I was talking with another person about this too. So, for example, with the music festival that was attacked by Hamas, there was a former Israeli military member that survived, and he was interviewing with one of the big news networks. And one of the things that he said that really stood out to me is he said, "I don't think I feel like I could rest until I get revenge on these people." And that kind of mindset of wanting revenge over justice it's a different type of thing than what we're used to in America nowadays. And I mean, it's a really sad thing, the loss of life that we're seeing in Gaza and in Israel, the hostages, the people that are in the hospital. It's just a bad situation all around. But I've definitely noticed a lot of the hypocrisy between the Kanye West situation and kind of the anti-Semitism that's been more common in the last couple months.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of easy to sit back and be like, hey, don't do this, don't do that. I think that's what everyone does. It's like no one's really involved in it. And that's, I think, why I just try to stay out of it. I'm like, there's so much going on and I don't understand it. And I could try to read up on it and I would have a general idea, but that's like you said, it's been going on forever. I'm not going to be able to fully understand it. And it probably is important for me to know more than I do. It's I don't know, what am I going to do? What am I going to say? I don't know, I'm more so of the belief, try to just kind of do your thing. And there's so much shit that's going on in the world. And if you're someone that's oh, this is horrible, then like, you know, work hard, make a good living, and like start a charity, you know?
Yeah.
Like, it's you can do good on your end, and I don't know. Like that's just kind of my view of things.
Yeah, and I would agree with a lot of that as well. I think also Americans tend to have a pretty quick. I'm trying to think of the right phrase to say. Pretty quick memory when it comes to stuff like this, like the stuff that was going on in Russia, Ukraine. For 3 weeks, that was super huge news, and everyone had an opinion on it. I definitely felt like really in a weird spot when that was going on, even though that was happening in Europe and didn't really affect me very much overall with my overall life. But then after a few weeks, everybody just kind of stops talking about it, and then you just forget about it because it's the flow of life, right? So I don't know if that's what's going to happen with this situation that's going on down there now. I think those people definitely still need our prayers, and it's a tough thing that's happening, but eventually we're going to move on to the next thing as a country, and that stuff is still going to be going on in those countries.
Mm-hmm. It's like COVID.
Yeah.
Like during COVID, I remember like, oh, this COVID-19 thing. I'm like, I'll worry about that when it gets bigger. And then it became a thing. Then I had to deal with it. But
I remember that too. Like you see the headline for it, and it's like, oh, it's just in China. It's not going to affect me. And that's like, oh, it does affect me.
It made its way to Texas.
They canceled March Madness. Oh my gosh.
And colleges are shutting down. You can't go home after spring break.
Rudy Gobert has COVID.
Yeah.
NBA season's canceled.
Yeah, man, that changed things.
Yeah, what a wild time that was. We could talk maybe about that on another podcast. I mean, there's just so much to break down from that time.
No, we could book another one in like a month or something, because we definitely could go for another 2 hours.
Easily, man.
Yeah.
You're a chill dude to hang out with.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Well, it's good to have you on. We'll definitely do another one of these down the road. I'm trying to think. Whatever. I won't cut it off anyways.